The ICC Women's T20 World Cup in South Africa has reached its business end, and we are just a few hours away from the two big semi-finals. The first of which will see India take on defending champions and overwhelming title favourites, Australia, who are undefeated in this tournament so far. And the second one will see the only other undefeated side in this tournament, England, face host South Africa, who've had quite a bit of an up and down run in the lead up to locking their semi-finals berth. And here I am, Annesha Ghosh, in Cape Town, South Africa, joining Shweta Haranhalli, former Mumbai captain and resident expert at cricket.com, who is sat nicely in her room in India and will be dissecting the big talking points from the two big matches, the two big semi-finals that could either yield a new world champion or, as most predictions go, could give us the same old but very, very domineering Australian side as the world champions. So, without further ado, let's get into it right away. The famed rivalry, India versus Australia, is set to be reignited at Newlands, Cape Town on Thursday afternoon, local time, 3 p.m. local time, which means viewers in India can watch India take on the very daunting Australian side sometime in the evening with a cup of tea in hand. What are your expectations from this fixture, Shraddha? Because we've seen in the recent past how India have gone on to flub their lines in major events finals, including the 2022 Birmingham Commonwealth Games final, the 2020 T20 World Cup final at the MCG in front of a record 87,000 odd crowd. And of course, the rivalry also goes back to the 2005 ODI World Cup final here in South Africa, where India came up short decisively, handsomely against a very formidable Australian side. Can things change this time around? Because this is not the final we are talking about between India versus Australia. This is the semi final. And there is precedent that the last time India took on Australia in a World Cup semi final, something absolutely mind boggling happened. And that phenomenon is known to be the 171 not out epic innings scored by Harmanpreet Kaur. Do we see something special tomorrow, you reckon?
I think as Indian fans, we would definitely hope for something of that kind. Australia has been a team that has been dominant, especially, in the past 4, 5 years, especially after the 2017 World Cup. The players have come out and said that, we've changed our style of play and we've adopted a more aggressive style of play. So Australia, after the 2017 defeat, has changed a lot, and they have been head and shoulder above all the teams as far as women's cricket is concerned. But in India Australia semi final, it is one of the most awaited clashes, and I'm pretty sure there'll be nerves across both teams. And before even the tournament started, I remember there was a video put out by Cricket Australia, and most of the players said that India is going to be the team that can challenge them. And that has been the rivalry across, the last couple of years. You talk about the 2020 T20 World Cup final. Yes, I agree, it was a one-sided affair, but India were pretty dominant in that tournament, and they beat Australia in the opening game. Come to the Commonwealth Games, they almost defeated them in the opening clash before Grace Harris took them over the line. Again, the final was a closely contested game. So India, Australia, especially in the semi-finals, I think the big players, India would be banking on their big players to step up, because if they don't, then Australian side at this moment is pretty much unbeatable.
So, who are these big players that who could potentially come in and play a big, big role or have a decisive say in the match? First up, Smriti Mandhana, one of their informed batters, who has looked in reasonably good touch, although she has been patchy at times despite going on to score 50s. And that could be down to two reasons. Number one, let's not forget that she is still very much playing with an injured middle finger in her left hand, because that is what kept her out of the opening game of the World Cup against Pakistan. She recovered, quite miraculously well enough in time to play the remaining games, and she's shown good form. She's been in good touch as far as middling the ball. She was quite dominant against England which was India's only defeat in the group stages. She took on the short ball reasonably well, as we know has been her one of her strengths. Smriti Mandhana is dishing out the runs, but she would need to do that in a more decisive manner, and by that I mean probably she will have to, however demanding a task this may seem, but she might have to go on to play till as late as possible, because
Yeah.
we know that a Smriti Mandhana unbeaten innings can go a long, long way towards determining whether India end up with a W in that game or an L, as was the case in the Birmingham 2022
But
Commonwealth Games semi-final against England. And Australia, mind you, fancy Smriti Mandhana as an opponent because they will just put an Ashley Gardner, in her face right at the start and try and upset Mandhana's rhythm. So Mandhana becomes a key play in my view, and also one of their big match players who hasn't really looked anywhere close to her pristine form, the pristine form we have seen Harmanpreet Kaur, the captain, be in over the past 18 to 20 months across bilateral matches or multi-team tournaments. And that has to be sorted quite easily. I do not know, to be honest, going by what I've seen of Harmanpreet at the nets or what all of us have seen of Harmanpreet in the matches. She is struggling with the timing, let's face it,
yeah.
but it's sport after all, and it's Harmanpreet Kaur after all. She doesn't need any bigger precedent, any bigger source of inspiration than her own 171 not out, which came quite against the run of the tournament. She was carrying some form in that semi-final, by the way, because she had stroked a good number of runs in the league matches, in the group stage matches, in the 2017 ODI World Cup. But that is not the case this time around. So what do we need to see Harmanpreet Kaur do? She has been very, very honest at the post-match pressers,
Yeah.
saying that she hasn't been able to perform the way she would have loved to. And that is the kind of honesty I think her teammates would want of her, given she's like literally grown in profile as the tournament has progressed. Remember, over the last couple of games, Harmanpreet Kaur became the first Indian cricketer to play, the first cricketer, in fact, male or female, to play 150 T20I games, the first Indian woman to cross the 3,000 run in T20I's milestone. So a lot of momentum has been gathering around Harmanpreet Kaur, not to mention the fact that the Indian women's cricket team are right at the center of the world's focus because of the WPL auction, and also the fact that I think everybody want India to go the distance this time around and overcome the final frontier. Harmanpreet Kaur will have a big role to play. But who are your takes aside from Smriti Mandhana and Harmanpreet Kaur, Shweta?
Surely, I think these two will have to perform, and Harman has always been very honest. Even during the toss against Ireland game, she said our batters need to put up runs on the board, and for to see her struggling, scoring 13 of 20 balls against Ireland was a little tough, because you do understand that she's trying really hard. And one of the things probably is India really want her or Smriti to bat through the innings. Let's be honest, the middle order is still very inexperienced, and they need one of these two to bat through the innings, guide the team. Because if a Harmanpreet Kaur or a Smriti Mandhana is out there in the middle, it just eases the nerves back in the dressing room. So one of them have to be out there. I think apart from that. We haven't seen runs from Shefali Verma in the four matches. She has been scratchy as well, and Smriti and Shefali are known to be probably one of the destructive opening batters in world cricket at the moment. So India would want runs from her at the top. And to be honest, apart from Renuka, the Indian bowling has also not looked really good. I mean, the spinners have been leaking runs, and especially against England, you have 3 wickets. You have England down 3 wickets in the power play, and the opposition ends up scoring 150. There has to be something terribly wrong then, because you cannot contain the opposition, forget the wickets. So India would need a Dipti Sharma to perform to her absolute best, especially because Australia have Beth Mooney at the top. So there is a left-hander, the off spinner, and the matchup would really work well for them. And they would need wickets from Renuka as usual up front. So these three players for me, apart from Smriti and Harman, would hold the keys. Runs from Shefali at the top, and you know a bit of bowling depth in terms of Renuka at the top and Dipti with the in the middle overs, because India is really struggling in the middle overs. If you probably see, most of the matches where India have lost has been they have literally gifted away the advantage to the opposition in the middle overs. So that is something that India would definitely. I'm pretty sure there's just 24 hours to go before the game, but that is one of the areas that they would really want to work on, is tighten things up in the middle overs.
And Australia will punish any errors that India make, be it in their bowling, batting, or fielding. Remember, the last time India and Australia locked horns in a knockouts final of a T20 World Cup, it was a very, very costly drop by a certain Shefali Verma at the start of the Australian
Yeah.
batting innings that literally knocked the winds out of their sails at the MCG. It was Alisa Healy's dropped catch, which came to bite them in a big way. Sure, drop catches happen all the time, and Shefali has taken a lot of takeaways from that, drop chance. But India cannot afford to err on the field
Yeah.
this time around, and we know that they are quite an unpredictable fielding unit. So fielding could be a deal breaker in this regard. It could be that
Yeah.
clincher in terms of whether 15 to 20 odd runs are saved by either side, which Australia have done consistently well
Yeah.
throughout this tournament. They have had dropped catches too. Remember, Georgia Wareham
Yeah.
has dropped sitters at short mid wicket. Some of the other players have not been able to, get to skiers, get underneath skiers in time, which have resulted in drop chances. But India are definitely not on par with Australia as far as fielding is concerned, and that could be a big, big factor in determining who ends up winning that game. Australia vice captain, one of their premier openers, and of course the hero of that 2020 T20 World Cup final to be back in the 11. And the way she was timing the ball at the nets on Tuesday, gosh, India have to be very, very careful in terms of the lengths they bowl to Alisa Healy, because she is equally dominant on both sides. And also, as I mentioned earlier, the fielding
Yeah.
aspect is going to be so, so crucial. They need to pile the pressure on through their fielding by checking the run flow, be it in the circle or through their boundary writing. They cannot afford to give away gifts in terms of their bowling and their fielding. Alisa Healy could go on to have one of the best matches of her life in the semi-final, mind you.
Yeah.
And the other batter they again will be very, very cautious of is Ellis Perry. Because if you remember how things went for Ellis Perry in the 5 T20I series played across
Yeah.
Navi Mumbai in December, she was oozing class, she was oozing timelessness in her through her batting and in the nets too. Something very funny happened. Peter Clark, their psychiatrist, Australia's psychiatrist, who has been with the team for a long, long time, close to 6.5, 7 years now, or even more than that. Peter Clark was giving throwdowns to Ellis Perry, and there was a point when Peter Clark did a bit of a Deepti Sharma. He pulled out of his delivery stride, and Ellis Perry went, "Ooh, I like that." Because they are preparing for a lot of
Yeah.
off spin and a lot of spin, as Beth Mooney said on Tuesday during a press conference, that they are wary of the fact that India will throw a lot of spin at them. And that is where things get tricky, right? Because India's spinners are not in form and they look all over the place right now. So, what is it that they need to do differently in terms of getting their spin bowling act in place is something they really need to find out very, very quickly over the next few hours, because this Australian batting lineup looks absolutely merciless and they will hammer, pummel, beat the
Yeah.
Indian attack to absolute pulp if they do not have their strategies chalked out. That is what we are seeing, you and I think will be the key factors or the deciding factors as far as the two batting lineups are concerned, or the two bowling lineups are concerned. And in terms of the conditions at Newlands, let me give our viewers a bit of an insight. Rain is not predicted. So
Yeah.
unlike what we have seen in Kleberha for some of India's group stage matches, there has been a lot of moisture, a bit of rain, which has aided somebody like a Renuka Singh. So will
Yeah.
India go for the additional pacer in Shikha Pandey, or will they bring back a Radha Yadav win. What do you think could be a better ploy there, Shweta?
Yeah. I was just going through the stats of how Australia have performed, and they have literally thrashed the spinners across the four games. So, especially left arm spinners. So, I know against the last in the last match against Ireland, India had a forced change because Radha wasn't well. But I don't see her coming, especially because Australia have a really good record against left arm spin. In fact, in place of Shikha Pandey, I would actually love India to have Anjali Sarvani with the new ball. I know she hasn't played any cricket after the five matches in Mumbai against the same opposition, but to have that variety up front and allowing the ball to swing, and the new ball's hardly going to swing for 2, 3, max 4 overs, especially it's conditions more conducive for batting, and you would expect somewhere around 160 to be scored at this venue. But to have Renuka and Anjali up front with the new ball is something that I would really, really want Harman to think about it. And another thing is they've always used Pooja Vastrakar. Apart from the matchup, they've always used her in the middle overs. So she is one of the options that Harman could actually go for, and along with the spinners to stem the flow of runs. So I don't see Radha Yadav coming into if the option was given to me, I wouldn't see her coming into the playing 11. I would stick with Devika Vaidya because she also provides you depth and the left-handed batting option. But yeah, I mean, Shikha for Anjali would be one of the swap that I would really be keen on doing because Shikha, I know she has the experience, I know, but we need a bit of variety. You can't have right arm pacers bowling, and so you need a bit of variety. And Anjali is known to get the ball swinging into the right handers, and with Healy at the top, with McGrath and Lanning coming in, we want that option. So that is one of the change I would really be tempted if Harman could actually go for that option.
As far as Harman going for certain kinds of options, and you spoke about how India could try and check the run flow of the opposition.
Yeah.
One way India have checked their own run flow with the bat, quite astoundingly, is the whopping number of dot balls they have played
Yeah.
across the group stages. I mean, this is the World Cup after all, and they have come up short in terms of their fluency with the bat against not just a big side
Yeah.
like England, which was easily their most challenging assignment in the group
Challenging.
stage, but also against a relatively, I won't call Ireland pushovers, mind you. They beat
Yeah.
Australia in the warm up, and they're a formidable bowling unit. So, all credit to Ireland for performing the way they did. Eventually, they won that group stage match, the fourth and final group stage match India played by just a marginal 4 runs, 5 runs, I beg your pardon.
5 months.
And that was largely due to the DRS calculations that came into play. So was Ireland were quite amazing with the way they performed, but India not so much. And that is one area, the dot ball accumulation. Harmanpreet has conceded that the team has been having a discussion around this because in the England game they played out some 51 dot balls. In the Ireland game, they played out some 41 dot balls. So in a T20 match of 120 balls, if you end up playing 8 to 10 overs, not scoring a single run of them, that is trouble. You are bringing trouble onto
Yeah.
yourselves. And that is again where the difference between an Australian side and an Indian side will be thrown into sharp relief because just as we spoke about fielding, one thing I noticed at the nets yesterday is Australia's thrust on running twos. Even Alisa Healy, who is, as I mentioned earlier, coming off a bit of a quad concern, her leg concern, she made it a point to run to sky for second runs just to be in the habit of doing so. But India have not done that well. And even somebody like a Smriti Mandhana, who has scored runs for fun through boundaries, even she too has been wanting in terms of showing that urgency in terms of the running between the wickets. If India can really be cognizant of the fact that every single run against this Australian team is absolute gold, I think they would be really putting a price on the
Yeah.
on this match. They would really be putting a price on this opportunity to go one better against an Australian side this time around. But to sum it up, Shweta, if you were to predict a result, however left field it might be, or however rooted in reality it might be, what would that prediction be in terms of the result of the first semi final of the T20 World Cup that will be played between India and Australia?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm more tilted towards Australia. I'm wearing a yellow as well. So yeah, I mean, but I mean, to be very honest with you, if Harman or Smriti don't have like a knock that they played in the semi-finals in the 2017, if we don't see a knock or a bowling performance of that caliber, then I don't think this Indian team could actually trouble Australia with the form they are in. I'm pretty sure they have the skills and they have the ability to beat Australia, but with the form and with the four matches, let's be honest, it's individual brilliance of particular players who has helped India through to the semi-finals, and it's not been convincing. And they would be the first person to admit this. I'm pretty sure the players would be the first people to say, yes, we haven't performed and had a complete team game to reach the semi-finals. But if you have to topple Australia in a semi-final, then they would need individual performances. And Smriti and Harman, it's a lot riding on their shoulders because the depth in the Australian team is scary. And it is what it is. I mean, probably more tilted towards Australia with the form they are coming in for sure.
It is India's dreams versus Australia's depth. To summarize the situation, the preview, that is your one liner preview, dear viewers, and I
Hmm.
couldn't agree more with Shweta there. I think too that India are not the favorites to win this contest. Australia are miles ahead in terms of how well rounded a unit they are, how much clarity their batting lineup possesses in terms of the roles their batters need to play. India do not have that still, and I've brought this up several times over at during our conversations here on
Yeah.
cricket.com's WhatsApp with women's cricket. That role clarity is going to be a clincher. India, unfortunately, haven't been able to find their way around it yet, and we are talking what just hours away from a semi-final that they're going to play. Australia, too good to be messing things up, or too deep as far as their resources go to mess things up decisively and not be able to mount a comeback. And really, it's going to take something extraordinary on the part of India to pull off an upset, right? So what we are seeing right now is Australia have to play their worst match of the tournament.
Possibly.
To lose this, India have to play their best game of the tournament to win this. It's as simple as that.
India have to play out of the skin. There's no looking back, to be very honest. It's just that they have to enter the venue as if it's probably going to be that last match of their careers and play as if they have nothing to lose, to be honest, because that's how you can defeat this Australian side. And to be honest, because we are talking about the dot ball percentage and everything, it is also related to a lot to Harman's form as well because she's the one who's anchoring the middle overs. So they need a big knock from Harman for sure if India have to get through this.
May Harmanpreet listen to you, Shweta, and may she go on to do something that really gives a lot more to this rivalry, which I think has done women's cricket a lot of good and has also played a huge, huge role in getting the kind of eyeballs to women's cricket in the recent past. Make no mistake that Navi Mumbai super over victory that India clinched against Australia in December in front of a record 47,000 strong crowd did play a part in how the WPL ended up becoming as rich as it did, as lucrative as it did. So the Australians have had a big role to play in the history of Indian women's cricket and in the history of this Indian side, if I may put it that way. So let's keep an eye out on how that semi-final goes. But we cannot obviously wrap up this show without talking about the second semi-final, which will see England take on South Africa. Again, two contrasting sides in terms of how their form has been at this tournament and also how dominant one batting lineup has been as opposed to the other. Your thoughts on England's form throughout the group stages, unbeaten and table toppers in the same group as India were, Group 2, and how do you think that semi final might pan out? In Newlands on Friday afternoon, local time.
The way England started off in the group stages, obviously they were one of the teams to reach the top four along with India. That's what we predicted from Group 2, and the way they performed yesterday in their match against Pakistan just shows that they're out here to prove a point. And England have been known to play aggressive cricket. They've changed their style of cricket after the last World Cup, and with Nat Silver firing, I think pretty much she's been the player of the tournament for me in terms of how she's performed with the bat, with the ball and in the field. So England clearly go into this clash as as the favorites to probably go through the finals, especially because South Africa, they stumbled in the first two matches against, say, Sri Lanka. That was an upset to kickstart the World Cup, and then against Australia. But for them to actually bounce back, it's more similar to how Australia's T20 campaign for the men's team panned out, because they were also probably on the brink of elimination. And for them to actually bring out their best game in the run chase yesterday was something that will probably give them a lot of confidence going into the semi-finals. But let's be honest, they weren't challenged much as far as the Bangladesh bowling unit was concerned. But against quality opposition, I think South Africa's batting is something that could probably let them down.
And England have a lot of depth in their own bowling resources. Their spinners have done exceedingly well, especially Sophie Eccleston, Sarah Glenn. Sarah Glenn has been outstanding, economical, and amongst the wickets. And Lauren Bell is somebody I am looking forward to watching, and I hope she gets she slots back into the starting 11, having not been picked in their last group match against Pakistan, the match that yielded a lot of runs. In England ended up scoring over 200 runs, and Pakistan lost that by more than 100 runs. So that was a big win that that England got under their belt, and that is going to play a big part in how they carry the momentum going into the semi-finals. But as far as South Africa are concerned, much as it may sound frivolous, I think something strange is happening with this South African side, because they have sensed that they lost a game that they shouldn't have, the Sri Lanka match. And ever since they have been playing catch up, their campaign has panned out pretty much word for word, step by step, like Australia's 2020 T20 World Cup, the women's team's World Cup campaign at home, which they ended up winning. Lost their first match. One of their star all rounders were in focus. Ellis Perry got injured here. Dane van Niekerk has been in focus because of the 18-second episode. And then, of course, Australia had to struggle to make it to the semis. Here too, South Africa have not been at their fluent best, so they've been patchy, and as I mentioned, they've not looked a convincing side.